class right now. So good afternoon, all of you. Today I have some or few announcements to make. For example, first announcement, as we are learning about CRISPR-Cas here in the class, at the same time, I also notified that a CRISPR-Cas system has been, awarded with Nobel Prize, and the two ladies, namely Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna, they both were given or nominated for this Nobel Prize for CRISPR-Cas system. That is first news. Second, about your quiz that is scheduled for 15th. Do you like to take it on 15th, or shall I extend it to some other date? That means next date would be 17th of October. Anyone, any of you class
Ma'am,
representative?
17th if possible, if others agree.
Okay, fine. Everyone else are in the same page?
Ma'am,
So
I have
that,
another.
Yes, ma'am.
17 will be
17
the
is
quiz on
fine.
20.
Yes, ma'am, 17th
It
is
is
okay.
fine, ma'am.
okay. Karthik, yes, go ahead.
I was just raising my hand to say I was okay with 17th.
Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am. Hello.
Yes, come ahead.
Ma'am, I have another quiz on 17.
Shubham, okay.
Yeah.
What is the timing?
It's in the morning.
Okay, this will be from 3 to 5, same timing, okay?
Okay, ma'am.
So hopefully you will manage it. So
Okay, ma'am.
what is the, for example, for the quiz on then according to number of, raised hand. Yes, Kohilika?
Ma'am, I too have another quiz on 17th, but still, it's okay. If others agree for the genome editing part, then 17th is okay for me to take the quiz.
Okay. So from my side, what I was thinking that today and tomorrow I will finish the syllabus, and then you won't have enough time to go through the syllabus. So that means you need some time. At least you can go through like 15th. You can take as a holiday from my lecture, and either we can have a question answer session, or you can have it off so that you prepare for on 15th and 16th, and then you can give examination on 17th. So basically the type of quiz will be almost similar like first one. The marks would be 30 marks only. What I would suggest to keep it at around 30 marks, and that the pattern would be almost similar. The only difference here that it will be much easier comparative to last term, because I think that for most of you it was bit harder, and you could not score it much better in your quiz one. So it will be much easier, and the number of hours would be not restricted to one. Instead it will be for 2 hours, so that you can start your quiz at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and mostly the paper should be finished within 1 hour. Like 1 hour is more than sufficient to answer those questions. And even if you have some difficulty, then another 1 hour is to upload your answer sheet and to give your answer sheet back in the this format. Because last time I had really a lot of trouble in getting all your answer sheet in Gmail, so I have uploaded it in the MS Teams itself. So you will answer it in the MS Teams. You can send your papers. Is that fine with all of you?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so that is the second point. And the third point is regarding your term project. So what I gather from your interaction session, like a lot of you are having troubles in, submitting quizzes or submitting a term project kind of thing. So together with Dr. Raj, I have discussed with him so that he will also contribute his percentage of marks in the term project, so that the term project is not limited only for 20%. From his side, I don't know how much he will contribute in evaluation. So it will be entirely for the two, sides, so that you will have to write only one term project and we both as an instructor will evaluate that term project, right? So the more I have to discuss with him in detail, but I wanted to let you know so that, from next week when he takes the lecture, he can also, tell about the same thing. So that is the third point. The details I am not mentioning here because the details will be given at the later time point, right? So for certain 20% is there from my side, but from Dr. Raj side, how much percent? Most probably 20% from his side, so that entirely 40% is for your term project, so that you write nicely, and probably one or two quiz from his side. So that is what will reduce the load from your end. That is my plan of changing this term project into two things, two
So, ma'am, the
merged one.
format of the template,
Yes, format. Yes.
format you mentioned the format, so it will be the same.
Yes, the format is same. No,
Okay.
format is same because it is also application based. So I think you can, take lectures from his side, and then first 15-20 days you will actually get a good knowledge, like what it can be used. And also you start reading on the papers so that you can already start, objectifying like what are the things you want to place in your term project.
And
So
ma'am, the deadline.
format deadline is mentioned in the online. I think 15th November or so I have mentioned it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. So these two, three things I have pointed out here. And the fourth important point is, as I mentioned in my first lecture itself, that at the end of my lecture, there will be one invited talk, right? So coming Friday, I have invited my previous colleague, or so to say, professor. Professor Niels will be giving talk in respect to gene expression, maintenance of gene, specifically in his area, right? So he also have used in his system CRISPR-Cas, but I don't know how much he will be talking about the system itself. But I guess he will be talking more about, results, and what is the, how gene expression is maintained also, and how NMDL, for example, nonsense mediated decay pathway is taking place, and what are the factors involved in it. So I would suggest you, if it is not clashing with any other classes, to perfectly, give your attendance, and maybe you will gain better, because I have already communicated to him that our audience is a mixed audience. Apart from faculty members, we have student colleagues and other members also in this postdoc and research students as well. So he will make his talk appropriately so that you would also, and don't hesitate in asking question. That is my only request, right? So these 4 points I wanted to actually announce before starting the class. Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, this is Shayanti. Ma'am, can I make a small request that after we complete your portion, can we please discuss the term project just briefly, if possible? All the instructions are given, but if you would once just discuss it, it would be helpful. Hello?
Okay, then yes, I can hear you, and maybe according to the time schedule, then I will discuss it on 15th, right? That is the only time I will have then.
Okay, ma'am. That would be
Yeah.
helpful. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, fine. Okay. So let's start for today's class, and briefly we will mention like what we had discussed last time. So in last class, we discussed about your CRISPR-Cas system, and especially in general, like you have the acquisition phase from the first time whenever you get the infection, some sequences of DNA is captured, then it is exactly at this position after leader sequences. This spacer is incorporated. That is the phase which is called as acquisition phase or adaptation phase. Then the whole transcript is formed, and with the help of Cas proteins, Cas associated proteins, you get the guide RNA or CRISPR RNA. And this CRISPR RNA actually motivates this Cas complexes, or together with Cas complexes, it targets protospacer, which is infecting at the second time. So basically, the whole system is divided into two parts. One is immunization, and second is immunity. Basically, once you have the immunity, and the process I had already explained, that the interference step, it actually destroys the signals coming, or fast DNA basically from infections. So, and ultimately in the immunity section, you get the immunization of the cell, E. coli cells. So this is what we discussed, and even further that we have discussed that this is classified into two class, 1 and 2, and that is also subtype, or subdivided, like type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, and type 5. And I mentioned in my class that we will discuss mainly about type 2, because it is the most prominent one. Like most of the people generally use type 2 system, although there are Cas13 and other systems people have started using for RNA adapters and other sequences. So there are a lot of diversity within CRISPR-Cas systems, as you can see here, and that also we have discussed that they target either DNA or DNA RNA, or basically RNA systems, right? So in today's class, and I had asked for questions, and I am happy to take your questions. They are with me, and during the talk I will describe so that you also get your answer, such that, and even if at the end if it is not clear, you can also ask me. So specifically for students who have asked specific questions regarding lecture number 16th. Okay, and I have tweaked little bit in my lecture number 17 so that I can answer your specific questions. So in today's talk, what is primarily my intention is to clear two things. First, your type 2 system. For example, this Streptococcus pyogenesis type 2A system we will discuss. And after that, we will also discuss like kind of experiments they have done so that these two persons also receive the Nobel Prize for, conducting this research. So for example, let's start this system. So what I will do basically, I will start with this describing CRISPR-Cas2 because as I mentioned already, this is right now for basically all the biotechnological applications, or mostly most of the systems are based on Streptococcus pyogenesis. And this was initially first described by Emmanuel Charpentier. And this is very interesting. What I will do, I will describe first the system and its molecular complexes, like what are the complexes. And after that, we will also look into the individual experiments that describes the detailed work that they both people have done and their group have done. So what you see here is your CRISPR array. For example, these are the CRISPR array. In color, you have the spacers, and in white, you have the repeated sequences, right? So in this, this is again associated with your Cas associated or CRISPR associated genes, as I mentioned here. So basically, Cas9 is only required for your interference step. And other proteins, for example, Cas1, Cas2, and CSN2, they all are required for your acquisition step. For example, they need these nucleases are needed for taking small pieces from the infecting bacteriophages and incorporating into the neighboring leader sequences. So this also we will see in small detail. So the CRISPR is the first, this whole thing is first transcribed into precursor RNA. So what you see here, these are the precursor RNA here. So this one, right? So, but apart from this precursor RNA, if you see this part, so this is also first transcribed into the system. This is called tracer RNA for trans-acting CRISPR RNA. And this is very specific for type 2A system or Streptococcus pyogenesis system. And what is important about tracer or trans-acting CRISPR RNA is this carries a sequence that is specifically here, and that is homologous to repeats. So these are the repeats in CRISPR RNA, right? So it carries a sequence that is homologous to the repeats in the CRISPR RNA. So it is able to, form this duplexes. So this is the homologous repeats, and so it is forming the duplex RNA. And this duplex RNA is recognized first by the Cas9 protein as well as by the host RNase 3 as it is shown here. And so basically what this tracer RNA is doing. So tracer RNA at the first place, it is forming a complex with RNA, repeated RNA. Then it is recruiting Cas9 at this position, and also by the forming duplexes, this are also recognized by RNase 3. So that means there are three things here involved. One is CRISPR RNA, one is Cas9, and third one is RNase 3. So all these things are important only when they form this complex with the CRISPR RNA, right? So once they form the duplex, so this is processed by RNase 3 of the host bacterial protein. So this will then make this complete CRISPR RNA or guide RNA, so to say, because it is guiding the complexes, right? Cas complexes. So what you have here is your final guide RNA. It's also called CRISPR RNA. So what you have right now in the complex is a kind of nucleoprotein complexes, right? So this is your nucleoprotein complex that basically acts as a surveillance complex. That means in the complex, it actually constantly scans your DNA present in the cell. And the way it does that, it first looks for a small sequence motif known as protospacer adjacent motif, or in short it is called as PAM. So in this case, this is specific for Cas9 system. That means the motif is kind of NGG motifs, N for any nucleotide positioned at this place, and GG is the dinucleotide for GG residues, right? So when it first finds this GG residues or dinucleotide, it starts to unwind this DNA and try to pair it with the CRISPR RNA. What you see here, it is melting this portion, and this is complementarity to your CRISPR RNA or the cRNA. So this will make a pair here, and if this step is successful, right, when the pairing is done, if there is no pairing, in this case it will move further and find another PAM sequences, and it will try to make a complementarity. So by doing this, if this step is successful, then after that it triggers a conformational shift within your Cas9 system. That means it is repositioned in such a way that it has two catalytic subunits. So what you see here are UVC and HNH. So these are the two catalytic subunits, or to say nucleases, present in the Cas9 system. So that is repositioned or after conformation change, it is positioned in such a way that one nuclease will cut one single strand DNA in double stranded one, and one catalytic site will break this single stranded DNA. So in this way, it cuts the target sequences. So now, yes, somebody wants to say something? Uh, Someone's mic is on. So basically what you have here are the two nucleases, and for the first time in actually history before CRISPR, there was no system where only with the help of RNA sequences, for example, only with the help of these sequences, you are recruiting your Cas9 total enzyme to that position only with the help of guide RNA. And that is why it is so simple, and it is so widely popular that everybody or all the labs have started using it, because it is just like, making one primer. So that you can design your CRISPR RNA, and then if you have all the systems ready, we will talk about it. If you have all the systems ready, then you can actually start, targeting your DNA. It is that simple. So what you need in the whole system, you need one, the CRISPR RNA complementarity to your protospacer sequence. That means the target the DNA where you want to make a cut, or you want to make a deletion or spaces. Then you need to have a Cas9 protein, which is really big protein, around 116 or 166. I have to still see. So this is really big protein, but one can utilize it. And the third thing what you need is tracer RNA. So we will see one by one. Now, this is in general, in short, the complete story about streptogenesis and pyogenesis type 2A system, that how CRISPR-Cas works in type 2A system. Now, within this, I received a few questions that that was asked, that how it discriminates from self from another. This is one question, and how this specific sequences are integrated only after leader sequences. So these two specific questions I will actually answer now, and these questions are very much pertinent, and lot of work is still under study, because not every molecular mechanism or every molecular detail is known about specifically type 2 system, how it is integrated into. So basically we'll see here, this is the source material of what you see here is the new spacers. So how the new spacers is suggested to be derived from actually processing linear double stranded ends, which are found in actually phage DNA, and they are formed especially from plasmid DNA. They are rarely found, but if there are nicks or double stranded breaks in plasmid DNA, then you can get a linear DNA, and that can be a source of spacer sequences. So basically, the open-ended or linear ends from phages are actually recognized by your repair enzymes. So if you would have studied, you have repair enzymes. So you have sorry about that. So you have repair enzyme known as REC-BCD, multi-subunit enzyme, and these behave as a nuclease enzyme, and this actually processes the ends of the sequences. And basically, we will see that after recognizing chi site, so after recognizing the chi site is, do you know what is the meaning of chi site? You have studied about chi site? So basically, chi is for crossover hotspot instigator. So that means after getting up to this position, you have repair enzyme chops off of most of the DNA, and it goes into single stranded DNA. And then after coming to these sequences, chi sequences, there is some conformation change in the repair enzyme BCD, and basically it starts cutting primary 5' end, and the 3' end is empty, where you have recruitment of a REC-A kind of enzyme. So this is very much prominent in the case of repair enzymes in the system. But basically, this specific sequence itself makes the whole difference. You have the difference why self and not self system is distinguished primarily by number of chi sites present. So basically what you have here is Cas1 and Cas2 complexes. So Cas1 is present as a dimer, whereas Cas2 present as a single. So this is something like, it is represented, but Cas1 represented as a 2 time, and then Cas2. So all together, this is forming a dimer kind of situation. So this is your complex which is formed here. And this actually takes why, so mostly it has been seen that the acquisition is basically double stranded DNA, and basically from the phage DNA. And why? Because if you see the composition, the self DNA, basically E. coli genome is highly enriched in chi sites. So basically you have lot of chi sites in E. coli system. So the rec BCD DNA processing is soon terminated, and thus you have only small amount or host genome, and that is can access for acquisition, or which is eligible for spatial material. So here you have very small sequences, otherwise you will have degraded material. By contrast, in foreign DNA, when you see, this lacks a high number of chi sites, and that means it gives you lot of positions for enriched site which is eligible for spacer acquisition. So this is mainly the reason, and I think this question was asked by Sandhya, that why there is how this distinguishing happens, and why plasmid DNA is not targeted by CRISPR-Cas system. So basically E. coli itself has a lot of chi system. Basically it is more than 14 times or higher in E. coli system, whereas this is very less from foreign DNA. That is one aspect, and second aspect is the linear nature of infection. For example, double stranded DNA where phage is infecting, so that is prominently recognized by your REC-BCD complexes, and then also Cas1 and Cas2 actually recognizes that, and it integrates into the leader sequences. Second important point here is to mention about the circular DNA. It has also been found, since circular DNA lacks this free DNA ends, and when you see the phages, they have the free ends, for example here. So this is the reason, also the second reason why you have mostly the mobile elements which are infecting the bacteria, which is used for the spacer sequences. And Sandhya, if you mentioned in your question why another prokaryotic genes are not incorporated, it is not like so. Most prominently, the sequences, extra chromosomal sequences of spacer has been found in phages, but it has also been seen that other mobile elements, for example, were also incorporated as a spacer sequences. So it's not restricted to phages itself. Okay, and there are few incidents where autoimmunity kind of things has also been inserted from their own. So as you read more, there are a lot of literature, and there are few instances when it captures it from its own DNA. So but that kind of cell doesn't survive, and it leads into the cell death. So basically these two differences are there. That means more number of chi sites, less number of chi sites in foreign DNA, and you have longer chances or more spaces for eligible spacer acquisition, whereas in this case you have less chance for spacer acquisition. So that is a prominent thing. Now coming to the general scheme of spacer integration. So that was the question asked by Somik. So how this whole protospacer is only recruited or positioned exactly at the adjacent to leader sequences. So this we will see. So basically, in general scheme, what you are seeing here, the spatial integration reaction, the array is predicted, or the this array, the repeater spacer are, before this sequence, you have the leader sequences. So that means it is preceded by leader sequences which are 80 rich leader sequence. That means lot of 80 sequences, rich sequences are there, and the integration of new spaces begins with the concerted cleavage and ligation reaction. That means there is a preference for at the leader end. So it has been found that the leader end, specifically at this position between leader and repeat sequences, there are very conserved site, and this depends on the type of CRISPR we are talking about. So here most of the details are known for type 1E system. So we will describe little bit about type E system, but the method is what I am describing here is general for all type of Cas system. So all kind of protospacers are integrated in this manner. For example, you have 5' site and the 3' site. At the 3' side, you have OH, and what you have with the help of another protein, you have first the nucleophilic attack by 3' OH side at the protospacer at the leader end. And this is also because of the specific sequences present at this space. I will come to it. So once you have the first attack at this position, then what you can expect, there is a bend in the this repeat sequences, and that will help the 3' OH of the another end to have the second nucleophilic attack at the spacer end now. So between the spacer and the second repeat position. So here there is a second attack. So in this way, now you have a something like intermediate position where you have the 3' ends is ligated into the single stranded region here, and the another 3' strand is ligated into single strand region here. And that means you have one repeat sequence here. In this case, this is repeat sequence, and in this case, this is another repeat sequence. So by integrating in this manner, you have only one single stranded repeat and another single stranded repeat, and this is the integrated position where your double stranded protospacer is ligated to single stranded repeat in both adjacent sites. So now the other ends will be repaired by the help of so-called DNA polymerase or other repair enzymes, for example, ligation on other nucleases enzymes. So via this process, the specific protospacers are ligated exactly at the adjacent, and this is concurrent with the cleavage as well as ligation process in the help of by the help of ligation and repair enzyme, then the repeats are ends are repaired. So by the end, so that means you have the repeat end which is again cloned. So, cloned I'm saying, but it is complementarity. So the same sequences you are generating again and again. So basically it has been found by various experiments that if you mutate repeat one, then you are not able to integrate actually at this position. But if you mutate other repeats which are very later time point, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But basically having repeat one and leader sequences is more than sufficient for integration of your protospacer sequences at this position. So these kind of experiments people have done. Amit, you want to note down your question and we can discuss at the end?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I can do.
Okay, okay. So there are two actually proposed mechanism for preferential spacer acquisition at the leader end. In type 1, what happens? So there are different subtypes of CRISPR that I've already mentioned. So the most of the information is available for type 1 acquisition. So that's why I'm explaining it here. So what happens in type 1 system? The integration host factors binds to a conserved binding sequence in the leader sequences, and it induces a conformational bending into the DNA. So which actually this bending enables the Cas1 and Cas2 recruitment complexes to perform its first cleavage and ligation reaction. So that means apart from Cas1 and Cas2 enzyme, this kind of proteins, for example, integration host factor in the case of type 1 system is helping. So in other types, this is a similar other protein like histone units and other proteins are helping them to get the acquisition of protospacer sequences. So what has been found that this Cas1 enzyme or Cas1 protein is very much making a sequence specific contacts, especially at the end of the leader sequences, 3' end of the leader sequences. And with that, it actually induces for cleavage and ligation process. Whereas coming to our specific interest is type 2 cases where Cas1 mediates the recognition of leader anchoring sequences. So there is something like, so in yellow what you see here is the conserved sequences, and this sequences is named as leader anchoring sequence. In short, it is called as LAS recognition. So that means this LAS recognition sequence is more than sufficient for spatial integration at this position. So what is special in this site? So I was checking this by today. So there is one paper where I could see that there is consensus sequences at the end of the leader sequences, and this is something like T C T A C G A G. So specifically this ends. There are number of sequences upstream to it. So what they did in this experiment. So these are the conserved sequences C G A G. This is present in all type 2 systems, and basically if you mutate some of these base pairs, so that means the acquisition is not happening at this position. So integration of the protospacer does not allow it to occur at this position, but it has been shifted to any other for in their experiment it was shifted to repeat 5 next to the repeat 5 sequences. So basically what happens in this case, Cas1 binding induces conformation change, and especially it contacts the 3' ending, and that is in the minor groove of your double standard DNA. So by doing so, it allows your nicking. So Cas1 and Cas2 also has the integrase kind of enzyme. That means you can imagine it is cleaving the site and it is also integrating it. So that means you have the nucleophilic attack at this position after cleavage, and then you have integration at this position, and the repeat will be again repaired by the system. So this kind of specifically the LS recognition sequence is itself is sufficient, and it has also been suggested that probably other sequences upstream of the leader sequences might also help in the proper acquisition of the protospace escape. So this kind of research is still ongoing, and lot we need to still know about these systems, that how exactly the whole acquisition work actually takes place exactly at the same position. So only this much so far is known. Maybe we know more about it in coming future, right? So last I could recognize from the reading of another paper. Is this clear, Soumik and Sandhya? Your answers are
Yes, ma'am.
clear? Okay. So there is another important thing which I want to mention here about the acquisition system, and that is basically with the sequences what it grabs, and that is PAM complementarity. Again, this whole thing, the picture what you are seeing here is from type 1E system, because that is the most extensively studied, especially in the form of acquisition, spacer acquisition. So basically, it has been found that Cas1 enzyme is properly positioned with its tyrosine residues to, see get the PAM sequences. For example, in type 1E cases, you have A, A, G kind of PAM sequences. So in every Casper system, you have different PAM sequences. For example, type 1, you have this PAM sequence. In type 2, you have NGG sequence. And type 3, you do not have PAM sequences, but you have some structural different motifs. So basically, in these two, you have prominent small nucleotide that acts as a PAM sequences. So when it is acquisition, that means when it is selecting for sequences which needs to be integrated at adjacent to the repeat sequences, then actually it checks for PAM sequence complementarity sequences. So complementarity to this AAG sequences, especially this G, so it checks for CTT, and then it cleaves exactly at this position so that these two are gone. And with the C, you have this C then integrated exactly at the terminal. So 3' OH exactly at C, and then G at the newer sequences. So that means PAM sequences is playing a critical role in acquisition of the protospacers complementary, and that is restricted to, in this case, type 1E, whereas in type 2 E, we don't know exactly if this is the system what is also taking place, but we know exactly that LAS recognition sequences is important in type 2 cases. Is this clear? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have described in short about the type 2 system, especially this streptogenous pyogenesis, and you know the importance of tracer, you know the importance of repeat array, then you know the importance of Cas associated genes, then why tracer is important because it forms complex with the repeat sequences, and once it forms the mature CRISPR RNA, then it recognizes the PAM sequences, and then it actually allows you to conformation change and breakage of the DNA. Now I will go in one by one about the molecular details what we want to see here. So basically, what you are seeing here is your Cas9 protein, and this is the crystal structure of Cas9 protein. Cas9 is the nucleus that cleaves your target DNA that we have already discussed or mentioned. Here, the Cas9 protein, it has 6 domains. So you have REC1, REC2, you have bridge helix, and then you have PAM interacting domain or motifs, and then you have two prominent nucleases, H and H, and you have RUVC nucleases. Now, REC1 domain is the largest and it is responsible for binding guide RNA. Now, the arginine-rich bridge helix is critical for initiating the cleavage activity upon binding to the target DNA. We'll see also in detail. The PAM interacting motif domain confirms the PAM specificity so that it will sequence the PAM sequences, and therefore it is responsible for initiating the binding of the target DNA. And these two are the prominent nucleases domain that cut one strand each. That means one single stranded DNA and another base. So in so that means Cas9 um, is actually a big protein, and it is normally inactive in the absence of any guide RNA. So what you need is the guide RNA to activate Cas9 system. So we'll see. So what you see here is your, guide RNA, or to say it is an engineered CRISPR system where the guide RNA is compromised uh, with single stranded RNA. So what you see here is tetra loop, and together it is also having CRISPR RNA. I will also come to this later. So normally what you have is the tracer RNA in different position and the CRISPR RNA in this different position. For example, here. So, but what right now in this slide, what you are seeing, you are seeing an engineered CRISPR RNA where these two things are linked together. For example, um, sorry. For example, here, so you have linked these two together. So that means you have the repeat sequences and this tracer RNA is togetherly linked in this case. Now you have this guide RNA, that means your target complementarity region. And this is important because every time you want to target a gene, you need to formulate your own target complementarity region. And this is as simple as creating a primer, but be very cautious because I know a lot of you have not prepared a good primer in your last quiz. So pay attention here, especially when you see you have the PAM sequences. That means N. At place of N, you have here is T, and then you have GG sequences. Upstream of this, you have 20 nucleotides, and that is important because mostly people prepare target sequences or the guide RNA complementarity up to 20 base pairs. So what you see here is your CRISPR RNA against your target DNA, and when you see the complementarity is exactly so you have A. So you exactly, if you prepare a CRISPR RNA, you will have A, you will have instead of T, you will have U, then you have A, C, U, C, A. Instead of T, you have U, and so forth and so forth, right? So exactly what you see here is your CRISPR RNA from 5 prime to 3 prime direction, right? So this is 5 prime to 3 prime direction. So AUAA. So this, if you prepare this CRISPR RNA and then it is linked with your tracer RNA here, that means this part which is targeted and is shown here in red, this will have a complementarity sequence with your target sequence, and that will have binding here. So if it matches perfectly, then you have a active Cas9 system. So right now what you see in this slide is your artificial guide RNA that binds to Cas9 protein, and upon binding, this induces a conformational change in the protein, and that shifts the position of REC2 bridge helix and two nucleases. So for example, in the inactive position, if you see REC1 is here, REC2 in this position, and the two nucleases are resting in this position. Whereas as soon as you have the proper guide RNA, then the PAM interacting position is here, then the REC2 is conformation is changed, and then you have two nucleases positioned at this position. And this is the what you have, the crystal sequences. This is inactive enzyme and this is the active enzyme. You see the positions, these two are completely different from this position to REC2 position and the bridge helix. Okay, so now once the Cas9 is activated, that means it is now active, then it searches for your target DNA by binding with the sequences that matches perfectly with the PAM sequences. So when Cas9 finds targets sequences with appropriate PAM sequence here, the protein actually melts the bases immediately upstream. So what you see here, the bases upstream of this will be melted. So here, basically these are the melted sequences. Okay. And then when this complementarity is formed, so that means if you have a melting position and then you find the complementarity sequences, that means CRISPR RNA and the target RNA is finding complementarity bases. And when this is done, then you have nuclease enzyme which work and which will cleave one strand at a particular time. So that means positioning of NHN and RUC exactly at the prominent places where you have to, and where exactly they cut exactly 3 nucleotides upstream in the complementarity and 3 to 8 in the non-complement. This we'll see in further. So this is the general outline of your complete molecules, what is involved. So what is involved here, you have target RNA, then you have CRISPR RNA. Here I've shown as a 1 because we will see how the system was generated or engineered in the case that we have only one RNA now. Then you need to have a Cas9 protein. So apart from that, you do not need anything. You need to know what are the target sequences that you want to actually cleave or what you want to target exactly. If you do not want to cleave single stranded nick or double stranded nick, you want to do. Okay, so if this is clear, then I will straight away go to the specific paper which is important in terms of important detailed experiments that they did. So this is the paper that won actually the Nobel Prize for both of them, especially for Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier. She is the director of Max Planck Institute in Berlin, actually infectious biology group. So what they found, so Emmanuel actually, she initially described this system, whole pyogenesis system, and for nuclease activity, she actually collaborated with Jennifer, and they both performed this experiment, and we will see how they actually programmed the dual RNA guided DNA endonucleases in adaptive bacterial immunity. And you have to be actually fast in grasping, because most of the exercise we have already done in previous papers where we saw how mutation and other things gives you the detailed experiments results. So before this actually manuscript, the role of Cas9 was hypothesized in CRISPR RNA maturation and interference. but the Cas9 role in its direct involvement in target DNA cleavage was not actually investigated. So this was anything for the first time people was using or their group was using Cas9 as a capable of targeting direct destruction of DNA which is infecting the E. coli system, or in this case pyogenesis. So what they did, they purified Cas9 protein from Streptococcus pyogenesis and tested its ability to cleave the plasmid DNA, or in this case oligonucleotide duplexes bearing PAM sequences, as you can see here. So what they found that the mature CRISPR RNA alone was incapable of directing Cas9 to cleave plasmid DNA. So what you are seeing here is the circular plasmid DNA, and this is the linear plasmid DNA. And I will describe here in first case. So here you have just the plasmid DNA. So that means you have the target sequences here, the PAM sequence, and other sequences are shown here, complementarity and non-complementary. So this is the CRISPR RNA they designed against these sequences. As shown in the yellow is the targeting sequences. This is the part of the repeat sequence which is important because these repeat sequences form base pair with the tracer RNA. So what you see here is the tracer RNA, and that forms base pair with the repeat, and hence the 5' site is forming base pair with the complementarity sequences here in the target DNA. So in first case, lane 1, if you have the plasmid sequence, then it will look something like this on the gel. Then together with Cas9, it will also not cut the DNA. As you can see here, this is in lane 2. In the third case, you have Cas9 and the CRISPR RNA also. That means you have this and you have plasmid DNA. But that will also not cut the DNA because this is activated only by the tracer RNA. So only in the case of, only in the case of tracer present, you have the cleavage, what you can see here. And the whole system is very specific because you have one CRISPR RNA specific to this sequences, and this is second CRISPR RNA specific to another sequences which is not shown here. And if you incorporate this CRISPR RNA and not the specific one which is targeting at this place, you do not see any what you say cleavage in this pattern. And also the system is dependent on magnesium enzyme which is required for Cas9 to work in this phase. So what they found here that the mature CRISPR RNA alone was incapable of directing Cas9 to catalyze plasmid DNA cleavage in lane 3. In lane 1, plasmid DNA is shown. Lane 2, plasmid DNA together with Cas9 does not cleave the plasmid DNA. However, in lane 4, when tracer RNA which can pair with repeat sequences of CRISPR RNA, it triggers Cas9 to cleave plasmid DNA. The cleavage reaction is both magnesium, as in case of lane 6, and the presence of CRISPR RNA, that is complementarity to the specific target DNA is important in this case. Where the CRISPR RNA capable of base pairing with the tracer RNA, but so in this case, we are mentioning about this case, capable of base pairing with the target, but not with the complementarity sequences, does not cleave your plasmid. So in this case, lane 5. Similarly, they did all the exercise in the linear case, and they found exactly the similar result, that only when you have the tracer RNA and the specific CRISPR RNA that is targeting the target site, then only you see the cleavage happening in this case. Otherwise, there is no cleavage. Okay. So next they obtained a similar result with shorter linear double stranded DNA. Thus, actually what they did, they labeled this DNA, the shorter fragments, 50 nucleotide sequences, and they wanted to see what is triggering the cleavage pattern. So what you see here, in both cases, you have tracer RNA as well as specific CRISPR RNA along with Cas9 and your, labeled sequences. In this case, they give you a specific cleavage pattern. And you can see here a prominent distinction between your complementarity sequence. You get very sharp band. That means there is a point cleavage. That means only at one position there is a cleavage. Whereas in non-complementarity sequences, the cleavage occurs at 2-3 positions. So for example, you get this band, you get this band, and you get other band. So that means position of cleavage is scattered. So here the position of cleavage is mentioned here from nucleotide 3 to nucleotide 8 is the sequences wherever it can cut at the sequences. Whereas in complementarity, actually it is cutting exactly at 3 nucleotide upstream of the PAM sequences. We will also come to this. So basically from this exercise, they could say that pre-CRISPR RNA processing by RNase 3 is important, as well as activating CRISPR guided DNA cleavage by Cas9. That means you need to have this CRISPR RNA guided DNA cleavage and also the tracer RNA that has been, taken care of by RNase 3, which is maturing this CRISPR RNA as well as your Cas9 activating enzyme. So these two things are important. So now there is a technique called, a primer extension technique. And with this technique, what happens if you have certain sequences, and if certain sequences are, ended at that position, then with the help of primer tagging, you can know that what are the position where the sequence has ended. So what they did, they took both labeled sequences, complementarity and as well as non-complementarity end, and they actually formed the primers to check where is the falling off of your primer. This is known as primer extension tool. So that means the termination of primer extension. So basically what you see here is the primer sequences for complementarity strand binding primers, as you can see here, and it gives them the prominent sequences where exactly you have the cleavage. For example, in your complementarity sequence, you have cleavage exactly at 3 nucleotide upstream of your this PAM sequences. So for example, here you have PAM GGG, and after that you have T, T, and T. So before this T, you have the cleavage at exactly at this position. Okay, so that's why you get this position. So in other cases, for example, in non-complementary strand binding primer, they saw that they are getting cleavage anywhere from this sequence to the other sequences. For example, after third, fourth, or fifth to until 8 sequences. So they are getting all the bands here from lower than 21, 20, 23, and this kind of sequences. So you get, so even here you get these prominent binding cleavage sites here. So from this exercise, they were able to find that what is the prominent nucleotides where you are getting specific cleavage pattern. Okay, so these two, so that means also from further experiment, they were able to say that non-complementarity strand is cleaved first by endonucleases, and then you have 3' and 5' exonucleases which comes and chops off the whole DNA. So that means you have the first cleavage with the endonucleases here. Now, as I mentioned, that Cas9 has 2 prominent endonucleases, and they wanted to find out which one is responsible for which kind of strand mutation, and which can whether complementarity whether 5' to 3' complementarity sequence, complement sequence is cleaved by RUVC or NH enzyme. So they wanted to actually check. So for that, what they did, they mutated the catalytic domains within these proteins. For example, here in RUVC, they have mutated aspartic acid 10 into alanine, and NHH sequence, they have mutated histidine to 840 to alanine. So obviously, before mutating, they would have known the structure and other important sequences, right? So that I have not mentioned here, but you can imagine they know the structure and exactly the domains, and they have tried here to mutate these sequences. So with mutating these sequences, what you see here that compared to your wild type, so if you have the wild type, you get a linear kind of DNA. So this is the plasmid DNA, supercoiled, linear, and then you have the nicked one. Whereas in the wild type cases, when you have both the nucleases prominently normal, that means there is no mutation in the wild type, then you get your cleavage in the circular plasmid DNA as a linear one. So that means this is the linear DNA. Whereas as soon as there is a mutation in D2A and H2A, that means you are getting a nicked DNA. In this case, what you are seeing here is the nicked DNA. Also in the linearized case, you see the linear DNA, but there is not cleavage taking place as in the case of wild. So they were able to show that these are the important residues for the cleavage, and compared to wild type, NHN cuts one plasmid strand, whereas RUC also cuts one plasmid strand on DNA. And now they wanted to check what is the which strand cuts which complementary strand. So for example, they did the same assay and performed the cleavage stage. What they did, they actually labeled again the 5' end of the sequences. In this case, only the 5' to 3', and in another case, the 5' to 3'. That means they either label the non-complementarity strand or the complementarity strand. In this case, the 50, and this case, the 50. And when they incubate with the purified normal Cas9 enzyme, you get a prominent band that is at the 23. Whereas when you mutate RUVC, then also you get the prominent band here. That means the cutting is taking place. Whereas when you get this mutated enzyme with H to A mutation at position number 840, then you do not see any cleavage happening there. Similarly, in this case, wild type gives you cleavage, whereas D2A mutation does not give you any mutation in this case. So that means your NHN mutation gives you the cleavage is taking place in the complementarity stand, because what you see here, the mutation in this place does not give you any cleavage. That means this is responsible for cleaving the complementarity strand, whereas the mutation of RUVC is important for your non-complementarity strand. That means in non-complementary strand you have lot of the degradation is more unspecific, I would say, in non-complementarity stand, whereas in complementarity stand, the degradation or the nick is taking place exactly at one particular specific. So these two things you should remember, that which nucleus is cutting which strand and what position. So one is cutting at exactly 3 nucleotide upstream, and another is cutting at 3 to 8 positions. So these are the two things, and now they checked also the tracer RNA sequences, CRISPR RNA sequences, and many more experiments. So they actually went into detail scrutinizing each and every exercise that one could actually probably do in one molecular biology experiments. So what you see here is your tracer RNA, and now they wanted to check what are the sequences that are important in tracer RNA to activate your CRISPR as well as Cas9 system to degrade your plasmid oligonucleotide sequences. So first, when you see, they took almost all tracers, just barring 2-3 sequences or 2-3 nucleotides from the 5' end, you get a prominent cleavage pattern. Whereas when you also reduce it to smaller sequences, you also get good cleavage pattern. And in doing so, such exercise, they were able to find very minimum sequences that are important within CRISPR tracer RNA that will give you a prominent cleavage pattern here. So this is the minimum sequences from 23 to 48 sequences, what you see here. So this is the minimum. That means it should have certain kind of binding with the repeat sequences, and also harboring some 5' site with the CRISPR RNA. So these were the minimum sequences they were able to find out in the tracer RNA. And similarly, they went for finding out the CRISPR RNA sequences. So now what you have here is prominent Cas9 is similar, tracer RNA is similar, where they have taken 4 to 89 bases from, for example, from here to all sequences. And what they are now changing is your CRISPR sequences. For example, in first case or in this case, they have taken 1 to 36 or 1 to 32. So here, so from 1 to 32. So that means when they are deleting some portion in the CRISPR RNA from 3' end, that means they are still able to give you the cleavage pattern. Whereas as soon as they reduce the sequences from the 5' direction, then you do not get any cleavage pattern. That means the complementarity between your CRISPR RNA at the 5' sequences and the proto-spacer target sequences are important. So these patterns are very, very important here. So the minimum they could find out this cases. So these two things are important. So they were able to find the minimum sequences within the CRISPR tracer, and they were also able to see that the sequences, what are the important sequences in the CRISPR RNA that are important for forming complementarity sequences with a trace protospacer. Now they wanted to actually go in detail and see how many nucleotides one can actually change at a go to, so that it will give you the perfect cleavage at the site predicted, or it will not give you the any site. So what you see here is your again target DNA sequences, specifically this is PAM, and again 20 sequences. And then they started mutating these sequences. That means your CRISPR RNA, wild type CRISPR RNA is shown here. So this has no mutation. And then they started mutating. For example, 9 to 20. That means from 9 to 20, all these sequences are mutated in red. TATT. Otherwise, other sequences from 1 to 8 sequences are prominently similar. So that means AAAAA and then GT sequences. That is similar here. GT So this is prominent. Then 11 to 20, then you have only mutation in this portion. Then 13 to 20, similarly 15 to 20. Okay, so what they found from this, that if you have the wild type, you have proper cleavage, and then if you mutate the sequences from 5' directions, for example 9 to 20 or 11 to 20 or 13 to 20, so that means you have no cleavage pattern which is going to take place. However, when you have only mutation in the first 6 nucleotide, that is acceptable. That means a continuous sequence of 13 base pair is required by CRISPR RNA to match with your target sequences. So out of 20 sequences, you have 13 which is accurately correct, and all the 6 continuous base pair, this is mutated. But this is giving the perfect cleavage as per appropriate one. And then then again 17 to 20 and 19 to 20 also gives you cleavage. That means a continuous stretch of 13 base pair between CRISPR and target DNA proximal to your PAM sequences is required for efficient cleavage, and up to 6 continuous mismatches in the 5' region of protospacer are tolerated. So more than this 6 nucleotide is not tolerated by the system. Okay, so this was the prominent finding from this experiment. Now they also mutated the sequences, that means PAM sequences. So what you see here, this is the wild type PAM sequences, NGG. So that means TGG is the PAM sequences here, and they wanted to check whether one can mutate this GG residues to something else. So here just reduce mutation in G does not lead any cleavage pattern. So this is the complementarity stand, non-complementarity stand, and here you do not see any cleavage. Here also you do not see any cleavage, or maybe very faint. And G again, if it is mutated, you do not see any cleavage here. So that means you have to have two important cleavage sequences, right? So now if you have seen the whole system, what is required in the CRISPR-Cas system? So what you require is three things basically. You require a Cas9 nuclease. Then second thing what you require is your tracer RNA that orients your CRISPR RNA in such a way that this CRISPR RNA forms the complementarity target DNA sequences. So now they wanted to check that instead of these three systems, that means instead of Cas9, CRISPR and tracer, these are the three systems which is required for targeting the DNA, whether they can reduce it to two system, and even after having the two system, Cas9 should work as per the original cases. So what they came up with the idea, they actually went ahead and then they actually linked these two things together. So this link with the help of linker loop, they generated one kind of engineered CRISPR-Cas chimera where you have the tracer RNA in red, then you have linker loop, and this CRISPR RNA is joined. So that means you have just one RNA instead of two RNA right now. So here you had tracer RNA as well as CRISPR RNA. But now with this engineered system, you have tracer RNA, CRISPR RNA mixed together, or chimeric RNA, I would say. And then you have getting specific sequence. That means one need to have only Cas9 protein nucleases, and then you can generate your CRISPR RNA. So they wanted to now check whether this kind of system can work in their system, and they can actually develop into more general system. That means wherever you want to have a cut, it can actually go and cut with this kind of CRISPR DNA. So here what you see, they produce two different kinds of chimeric tracer RNA, where you have chimeric, yellow portion is similar, which is targeting to target DNA. In one case chimeric R, you have bigger tracer RNA. That means the portion here is bigger. And then second chimeric B, you have shorter tracer RNA. And in their exercise, they have taken the earlier positive control, this one 4289, this gives the positive control, and here chimeric A worked best in their case, whereas chimeric B with the shorter sequences did not give them cleavage. So that means then in further experiment they took this chimeric A. That means you have to have, apart from some complementarity with the repeat sequences. So that means you have the red sequences, what you see here are the repeat sequences, with that tracer RNA is having complementarity. But apart from that, it should have certain sequences that will give them the stability, and that also generalize the system. That means confirming 5 to 12 bases beyond the tracer CRISPR base pairing interactions are important for efficient Cas9 activation. So that means this CRISPR RNA is important. Now they wanted to establish, after this they wanted to establish with this engineered system whether they can target any specific gene. So what they did, they used one plasmid DNA, and this plasmid DNA they took artificial one where GFP was cloned. So you have this GFP sequence cloned in PCF kind of plasmid, and they targeted 4-5 positions. So what I have shown here is GFP1, GFP2, 3, 4 and 5. These are the 5 sequences. So that means 3 sequences are targeting in 5' complementarity strand, whereas in non-complementarity strand you have 2 sequences, 4 and GFP4 and 5. And in all the cases you have to have some restriction, because without PAM it will not work. So that means you have to have GG mutants or dinucleotide. So for GFP1 you have TGG, for GFP2 you have GGG here, and 3 similarly in 4 and 5 you have GG sequences. Now they are targeting these sequences 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and for that what you need your chimeric DNA, chimeric RNA, that means tracer and CRISPR RNA together. So this is GFP1 sequence, this is the target sequence, and this is PAM. So that means you have to create a CRISPR RNA that is complementarity or exactly similar to these sequences. So what you have here is CCAAUU, instead of TT you have UU. So all these sequences will be exactly similar, and up to this phase where you have PAM, just upstream of PAM motif. You have all the sequences exactly similar. Okay. And then you have these are the sequences for tracer RNA, and this will remain constant for all the cases. So what is different in all the cases? Only the sequences which is targeting. For example, this is exactly similar up to AU's position, and other sequences are exactly tracer sequences, especially also here GA. So here GA sequences. So similarly, they actually made all this chimeric RNA, and they wanted to see whether in their system, when they incubate it with the Cas9 protein, whether it will cleave this DNA, targeted DNA or not. And to their surprise, it was very heartening for them to see that this can be actually used by any of the target DNA. For example, GFP1, it gives specific cleavage. 2, 3, 4, 5, they all gave the specific cleavage pattern. So with this kind of demonstration, they were the first person together which actually dealt in detail about every system, that how it works, what is the minimum sequences, whether they will be engineered in. And after this paper was actually published in 2012, I was still a postdoc in University of Cologne, and I remember we were holding the spring conference, and we invited Jennifer Doudna, and she was very welcoming, and actually she came and gave this talk on her paper, specifically this paper itself. And by that time, actually Zheng Feng also, he had already started, working on CRISPR-Cas system and producing it into next level. For example, in mammalian cell culture. So he had widely, mentioned in this method paper that how this CRISPR-Cas system can be actually widely applicable in all different species, in all different cell lines. So he had mentioned that. So this is the remarkable paper, and based on this paper, they both have received the Nobel Prize, at least naming. A Nobel Prize will be distributed. So if you have any further question based on this today's lecture, please ask. I will summarize the topic. What we have seen for today's lecture is we have seen type 2A CRISPR-Cas system. Then we have seen the molecular requirements. That means we require Cas9, tracer RNA, CRISPR RNA. PAM is the restriction in target DNA. And then how the engineered single guide RNA was used, which simplifies the system. And the system is so simple that we just need to, how to construct this guide RNA, and efficient, versatile, programmable, that you can program it and, target any kind of system, DNA programmed. So all this other system, what we have studied in genome editing so far, I would request you to actually go and study little bit about meganucleases. I have not covered it here. And it is small, 2, 3 sentences only. Okay, you can study on your own, because there was no specific reason to diversify that meganucleases because of restricted specific sequences. All other system what we have studied, especially zinc finger nucleases, then talons, both are protein based. That means you have to construct these proteins every time you want to target an enzyme. Here in CRISPR, the good thing is you can purify your Cas9, or you can have a plasmid which will express your Cas9. And then what you need to change all the time is only your CRISPR DNA based on your target sequences. So the one protein is constant Cas9, and then you can, target your specific sequences based on your guide RNA. So that is the advantage of this system, and that is why it is so popular among the scientists. And in fact, apart from Cas9 system, people have started using Cas13, which actually, targets RNA, and that is also fantastic actually. And in I think June, I attended one RNA lecture, and I have captured one snapshot of that presentation. So you can see there are a lot of applications, especially for Casper 13 and Casper 9, how it can be used at different, places. For example, virus detection. So what you have here is COVID. So detecting COVID is not very, lot of people have prepared lot of different kits and other things, but if you see the using guide RNA, you can specifically detect this within very small time, basically. So virus detection, A to I editing, that means ADR attaching, there is a special enzyme which converts adenine to inosine. Then you have RNA demethylation, that means you can link your Cas9 or Cas13 into different proteins. So all this kind of applications are very, very much possible. Alternative splicing, tracing by creating 404. And in fact, in this I forgot to mention. So we talked about double stranded cleavage. But instead of that, if you cleave just one, if you mutate only one of this enzyme, that means it will also give you a single stranded break. And instead, if you do not require a double stranded break, if you require only single stranded break, so either of this you can use. And that to be very specific, if you want a break exactly at the complementarity sequence or the non-complementarity strand. So based on these two nucleases, you can actually target that strand. So that is also an advantage with this kind of sequence. Specific nucleases. So with this, I conclude with today's lecture, and this is now open for your questions.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible. Please go
Okay,
ahead.
so I had one question, not particularly about this lecture, but more about CRISPR per se. So
Yes.
basically what happens in CRISPR is that when the cell is attacked by bacteriophages, the genetic material of that is chopped up and put into small sections within the genome of the bacteria, which acts as a database for future infections, very broadly
Correct.
speaking.
Correct.
So this sort of reminds me of plasmids, where certain cassettes are integrated to confer protection against environmental hazards for the microorganism.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see that when the selection pressure is removed, the cassette is thrown out of the plasmid, because since information is negative entropy, it takes energy to maintain anything, and since it doesn't need it, it'll throw it out. But we saw how CRISPR, the particular gene fragments are used to process the downstream events. But what happens when a cell isn't required to keep all the cassettes? But with time, the more and more cassettes will be added, and that will make it unstable both energetically and from a structural point of view. So is it only a one-way mechanism, or are the certain cassettes thrown out when they don't need it, similar to how plasmid cassettes work?
Okay. So this is very interesting and very genuine question. Thank you for asking. Actually, what happens, it has also been seen in CRISPR that there are two things how it can regulate. For example, in this case, if you see here, so all your premature RNA, right? So now once it is formed, it has been seen that these RNA is also regulated depending on their position. For example, the latest infection is always at the first position. So that means the bacteria is undergoing this kind of infection, if whatever color is this, violet, if you want to say. So this is infection. So that means when the RNA is produced, it has been seen that more of the RNA is produced from this. And as you go down, there is some kind of regulation based on the infection, that how much RNA copy is produced from which kind of infection. So if a bacteria is not undergoing that infection, the number of RNA copy is produced as very less compared to the prominent infection which is facing. That is one kind of regulation. And second regulation is also, it has been seen in the array system also, CRISPR system also. And there are few cassettes which are also removed from time to time depending on the infection area. But these are the two regulated process which I could figure out, that based on the number of copy RNA can produce, because it is not like DNA. So DNA, so this RNA can be produced as a number of times expression depending on their lot of regulatory mechanism, promoter sequences and other. So based on that, so this has some kind of matching with the type of infection and the timing of infection, and that is how it is regulating the infection process with the number of copy of RNA it generates in the system. Is this clear? Yes, Rajiv.
Uh, Ma'am, and in addition to what he asked, so let's say a protospacer has already been integrated into the repeater sequence. What if the same protospacer is brought in? Will it be able to recognize, or will it integrate it again?
Yes, I was reading something about this, but I don't remember exactly how it works. But there was some kind of, biased against the differences. The same kind of proto sequences was not allowed to be integrated. This is vaguely I remember, but I have to read it again. So sorry to for say that, but mostly one type of kind of proto spacer sequences was recruited. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, and one more thing.
Yes.
Ma'am, you said that the recent infections are recognized first. Do you mean that they are more closer downstream to the leader sequence?
Yes, exactly. The constant in so because it can give you the stage at which it was infected. For example, in this case, if I say violet is immediately downstream of the leader sequences, that means this is the infection which caused latest in the E. coli system, and then it is the green, and then it is the other sequence, and
So,
it is, huh? Yes,
yes,
come on.
ma'am. And so, is it that repeater sequences are somehow kept adding, like, are they added after the leader sequence? Um,
So, as I mentioned, I think you joined little late. Did you see this slide? Were you there in this
yes, ma'am.
slide?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so the leader sequences will be added, not exactly. So the leader will act as some kind of promoter or regulatory sequences. So the repeat sequences will be duplicated in this case because of single stranded and other stranded. Nothing as such for the leader sequences. There is some kind of bias here. For example, LAS recognition sequences are there, and that will help you to get the protospacer exactly at adjacent to the leader sequences. So that is the role of leader sequences.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I confused between the terms leader and repeater.
Okay.
That's fine. So in one repeat sequence, we can have multiple proto spaces integrated. Is it so?
Normally not. So
Okay.
basically, you have just one repeat sequences. This repeat sequences is enough to integrate one protospacer, and this repeat again then resynthesizes here. You to
Okay.
say so. So
Okay.
for example, one has a complementarity strand, another has non-complementarity, and based on repair enzymes, it will have complementarity sequences that will fill the basis at this position and this position. That means you are having R1. If you have to say this repeat one is generated again and again. So it has been found that if you have just the leader sequences and the repeat sequences, this is enough for your protospacer acquisition. Okay, so that spacers will be
Yes.
added at this position. And
Thank you, ma'am.
somehow this is has to do something between the LAS sequences, which is very important, and probably Cas9 PAM sequences and other upstream sequences could be important, but nitty-gritty of this whole thing is not entirely clear. So that is why whatever I mentioned, this much is there in the review paper, and the latest review paper I actually went through is 2019, Marafini. So he was the person actually he started on the acquisition of protospaces.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, Tritankar.
Yes. So as an add-on to the last question, so you mentioned that mainly the expression is transcriptionally controlled, and in some cases, some of the older cassettes are thrown out. Right.
Yes, yes, yes.
So is the entire when it is being thrown out, is it because as the genome size goes on increasing due to the addition of protospacers, when I'm replicating, it creates an issues with the lagging strand replication, and that's why the older ones somehow don't get replicated? But can that be even a correct way of thinking, or is it a completely different mechanism?
Oh, mechanism wise, I have to read it again. I have not gone into entire details, right? So this I would have to recheck again. So what exactly tells them that these are the sequences. Probably what I came across was some kind of mutation or something, but I will have to recheck it again. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, and my last question, CRISPR is a pretty efficient system to keep bacterial cells healthy. So why don't eukaryotic systems have a analog of that? Just because they have a nucleus?
That is a good question. Maybe they have an analog, but we are narrowing down like seeing as a CRISPR, and we are yet not have seen something like that. There are a lot of things to be discovered still.
Oh,
So I am not sure like what to say right now.
and this has bugged me ever since I learned about CRISPR. Why don't we see anything comparable to that in eukaryotic systems?
So basically, so far what we have seen is Archaea almost 80%, and then more than 50-60% in other kind of bacteria. So they have CRISPR, but people are still working to see in other species whether this kind of system exists. So probably we have something better or maybe diverse in terms of protein that is behaving similarly. So yeah.
Okay, like proteosomes or mechanisms
Yeah.
like that.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, I think we actually had acquired immunity system which is like more advanced or more robust because like the whole sole purpose is for acquired immunity.
People say it is acquired immunity, but as people are reading more and more about that, it has more function than acquired immunity. Acquired immunity is one, but in other kind of, if you read CRISPR 1 or CRISPR type 3, there are other advantages also. So that depends like what type of CRISPR we are talking about.
Okay. Ma'am, I also have a question on this PAM sequence.
Yes.
Like what we have seen in PAM sequence is PAM sequence comprises of three base pairs, out of which even two, like only two of them are changing. So like it somewhere will be around 16. Like for every 16 bases, we can estimate a PAM sequence. So every time the cache should always unwind for every 16 sequences.
That's a very valid question, Arun. Actually, it's not only PAM. People still think that PAM is one of the factor, and they
Okay.
are still looking for another sequences which could, it's entirely not clear. But if you see, PAM is the one of the important factor, because if you see Cas motifs also, you have prominent domain which actually interacts with PAM. So you have PAM interacting motive, if I've shown in this case, right? So,
Yes.
so that specifically works with the PAM sequence itself. So that helps, yeah, that helps in recruiting PAM sequences in this case.
Okay.
So PAM is the prominent one, but apart from that, there could be other the sequences also. But
Okay.
yeah.
Ma'am, like I would just I would like to ask another question, if at all, like if there is if there is a chance that if we find out that the PAM sequences are the initial recognition sequences,
Yes.
like if you try to lengthen the PAM sequence, let's say if I try to incorporate 5 bases as PAM sequence, could we fasten the process of Cas9?
You have to mutate then Cas9. So that means right now you have PAM interactive motif, right? Motif
Yes,
means
ma'am.
you have some certain amino acid within this whole enzyme that will
Yes,
be,
ma'am.
harboring or maybe having some kind of interaction with GG, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes,
that
ma'am.
means you have to create some kind of, motifs within the sequences that will have specific contacts with your lender sequences, and which,
Yes, ma'am.
in my view, it makes it more difficult to create that kind of motif, artificially create that kind of one. It's
Okay.
not impossible, but it will be much more difficult.
Like, but will it be true that if we lengthen the PAM recognition sequence, the system will go fast? Like rather than opening up every 16 base pairs, it can open up at 4 power 5 base pairs. Is it a correct way of thinking?
Right now I have not seen any paper supporting that idea, because instead of mutating PAM, people have rather checked more on the nucleases and more on these two target sequences. So they have not touched as such because they are only dinucleotides. And then even if you touch one in the experiment you have seen, there is no nuclease happening. That means caspase is not activated, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
so if you disturb that kind of interaction motive, you will nullify the whole Cas protein itself.
Yes, ma'am. I get it, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rajiv, you have another question?
No, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, ma'am. Last
Sandhya?
question.
Let Sandhya ask
Yes.
and then ask after that. Yes, Sandhya.
Ma'am? Hello, ma'am. Could you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ma'am, I remember a slide where you showed head and tail encoding genes of bacteriophages are recognized by CRISPR system. For example, if we use lambda insertional vector or replacement vector to transfect the E. coli for our target genome, so these vectors also contain the head and tail encoding genes and other genes, and only the target gene in place of the recombination gene. So what will happen in such instance, ma'am? Actually, I got disconnected in between, so I don't know whether I have answered this question, ma'am.
Okay, so what exactly is your question? That how your can you repeat your question? Is this the slide you are talking about?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So here what I said, that why there is more kind of sequences which are coming from the phages or any mobile elements. So in your question, you have mentioned that only phages are inserted as a spacer. That is not the case. So apart from phages, any mobile elements which are foreign to the E. coli, they also are part of spacer sequences. Okay. So it's not only like phage as a prokaryote is getting recruited as a spacer sequences or protospacer sequences. So in this case, what happens, the phages, whenever it is infecting E. coli, they have the open-ended DNA. That means there is no circular, or this end is totally open and you have 3' OH group exactly at this position. Okay. So you have linear ends open, which is recognized exactly by repair enzyme. These are the repair enzyme BCD. After recognizing this linear ends, they will start dissecting it into smaller pieces. That means smaller pieces are generated after repair enzyme. And then you have cas1 and cas2 complexes. They take this spacer sequences as a acquisition, and because of this chi site, which actually conformation change occurs after this repair enzyme comes to chi site, crossover hotspots, what we say here. And because of that, it induces a change in the conformation so that its nuclease activity is reversed, and it only chops off the 5' end, and the 3' end is then recruited by recombination enzyme, REC-A kind of enzyme. So because of these sequences, you have in self DNA lot of chi sequences which doesn't give them the chance to have acquisition of the spacer sequences. And that is the reason mostly the self DNA is not used as a spacer acquisition, whereas in the foreign DNA, the composition of chi is more than 14% less compared to 14 times less compared to self DNA. And then you have the spacer acquisition segments which are much more come in foreign DNA, and that is used as a acquisition cases. So that means the open-ended, the chances of having more spacer, and third one is your circular DNA. Circular plasmid DNA is not used generally. Only when you have a linear nick or the double stranded nick in your plasmid DNA, then only you create this open-ended, and that can be used as a spacer sequences. If I'm able to answer your question, I don't know, but I thought this is the question. Uh,
Ma'am, for lambda bacteriophage vectors, it will be a linearized DNA when it transfers into the E. coli or any other prokaryotes, right, ma'am? The cause sites will be.
So you are asking that why these sequences are not used as a spacer sequences?
Yes, ma'am. When we use lambda vectors like insertional or replacement vectors, because that contains the head and tail genes, and we
Okay.
will not be having only the recombination genes. Instead of that, we are having our target gene, right, ma'am? Even it will
Okay.
be a linearized one when we transfect into the prokaryotes.
Okay. So what about the chi sequences there? Have you checked it? And so this is the major composition, and since there is some kind of self and non-self, especially origin of replication, if you have to see whether those vectors, because these are vectors and these are has to have a origin of replication from E. coli so that it can replicate in E. coli. So those things also could matter. You can check that. I'm not entirely clear on this, but you can check on these kind of positions like origin of replication, that also makes it self, and then chi sequences are the major player here.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, I had one more question in the form, ma'am, regarding
Yes.
the deletional mutation studies in the central repeats of
Yeah.
DNA.
I remember that question. Okay, so I don't know if it is here. No, it will be in somewhere. Let me. 16th. So this question, right? So you asked that why there is a deletion of 11 and 14 repeats gave them the additional recognition. So is this question right, Sandhya?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So here I mentioned that when only in the case of delta 11 to delta 14, where the 4 repeats were mutated, it was seen that they generated an additional new kind of what you see activity, and that is because there was an allele present in that plant. For example, usually this is the sequence for BS3, right? So this will go and recognize the BS3R resistance enzyme. When you delete these sequences, it will not go and recognize the R sequences. That is the reason it does not give any specificity, and that is the reason it does not give you any hypersensitive response. Whereas in this case, a hypersensitive response was found in different plant system because there was another allele similar to BS3, and that was later called as BS3E. And specifically, if you see the sequences of BS3E matches with these repeat sequences, and that was the reason of generating hypersensitive response in different species. So basically because of the presence of an allele.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome. Any other doubts? Yes, Tirthankar, you can ask now.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, last question. And so you said that the protospacer sequence is essentially a sorted array, temporarily sorted array of a particular bacteria's infection history.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So if I isolate the same microorganism over a large geographical area, and then if I analyze the sequences, can I get some intuition as to how a particular microbe spread out over a geographical a large geographical area across the evolutionary timescale? Is that theoretically a right way of thinking?
Yes, I would say so. Or one can actually say that in this environment, this kind of phages are infecting that prominently, or this kind of infection is most prominent, at least. These, these can be determined. same species from different environmental conditions or different geographical area, and you can check out that what are the insertions at different things. Yes, definitely.
So when we are studying microvirome interactions, we can do most of the metagenomic work with the ribosomal sequences, but this can sort of give us a geographical intuition, right?
Correct, correct. But how would you say a negative result in that case? So there could be another pressures also which will not cause, for example, it has been seen if you have more chi-side, you have less integration. So if you have less chi-side, you have more integration. So these kind of some kind of cues you have to always balance it as a positive or negative control.
Okay.
Okay. Any other queries? So at least for me, it was really interesting to go through all these papers, and thanks for all of you for asking question, because that makes me more pro for reading further review papers or articles. Although I'm not an expert and I'm not working in the CRISPR area, but it is really interesting, and knowing or reading more always gives a pleasure actually. Um, So what we have seen so far, all prominent tools that is used basically in the editing course or editing field to use as a target DNA, and none, because we have not seen what after targeting. So everything what so far we have seen is only up to target a certain sequences of DNA. So whatever happens after this is further done by the cell itself. So in next lecture, what we will be seeing that how cells actually cope up with this double-stranded break or single-stranded break. So basically, we will be reading more about homologous repair mechanism, and what are the different ways one can see what are the components, molecular, enzymes or proteins what are required for these kind of recombination system. So for today, we have almost completed a small section within Casper, that means type 2. And within type 2, only one paper that describes every detail, like what are the system especially one can use, and how you can actually use the system by only two method. One is tracer RNA together with your CRISPR RNA, and the second thing is your Cas9. And especially in the field, people had started using Cas9 as a plasmid, because that plasmid, if you can express in the bacteria, that will give you Cas9 protein, and then you can actually have your guide RNA. But the timing of expression was difficult, so then people started using purified protein, then they complex with the guide RNA, and then they try to transfect into the cell. So these kind of system actually they started using, and based on the cell types they are using and other system, either embryo or any other system like cell lines basically. So people have used different kind of way of transfection, way of working, either plasmid, either yeah, virus system, because you can create a system where your Cas9 will be infected into the cells, and then cells will produce Cas9 protein. So based on different vector system has been there. For me, we have done very small experiment in our lab where we wanted to actually mutate one gene in exon 1. So what worked in our system was creating stable cell lines with the Cas9 system, Cas9 protein. And once you have this Cas9 protein, whether stably expressing or regulated expression, whether, because we can actually regulate its expression. So only when we require that can be switched on. So based on that system, we regulated Cas9, and then we transfected with the help of lipofectamine our gRNA, and that gave us the best result, especially in HeLa cells and HEC293 cells. But I have seen people using plasmid system efficiently in HEC293 system also. The important part here, especially I can tell for the human cell line, is the selection method. Because once you do the infection or transfection, then how many cells are first transfected, that you have to see, select, and then single colony one need to select. Like only one cell has to be, cultured. And especially if you are working with brain cells, especially some typical cells, they are not happy individually, proliferating. That is one limitation. So those kind of cells do not actually respond well. And also the protein, especially if you are working with a protein which is very important, essential, and want to understand that mechanism of that protein, and if you want to knock out that protein, that means it's embryonically lethal in mice, and in your cell, if it is very important, you will not get any cells, positive cells giving any response. So those are certain limitations in the field of any protein study or this kind of functional studies. So what in this case is people start working on conditional knockouts then, that only after certain stage of infection, certain embryo development, especially in mice, after 6 days or embryo or 7 days embryo, then they start doing any knockout, or only one allele is mutated so that partial functional analysis can be done. So these are the ways one actually sees how to overcome these problems. So when you are actually creating your project, so you can see all this aspect and maybe think very streamlined, like clear, like first में क्या लिखोगे, second में क्या है, and then streamline your objectives. Don't mix up too many things. Clarify कि मेरे को क्या बताना है and कितने छोटे में बताना है. The more clear you are, the more better you will write your project. And don't copy. I would not like you to copy from somewhere. You can see all the papers, see ideas you can take, but ultimately the protein of interest, why, and methods, obviously it will be similar, but you can write like why you are doing this. That is the most important question, that why and why and why. So objective, what is your objective, why you are doing this, and how you can relate it to application based, like what is the need of doing this kind of project. So these 3 points are important when you are looking, reading, and doing any experiments. Okay. So I think we have at length talked about CRISPR now. I will close this session with this lecture now. So from tomorrow onwards, we will see our homologous repair system.